Hey, Radiance here. Using local storage in React components may not be as straightforward as it seems. After years of React development, I finally arrived at a bulletproof solution which I'm happy to share. You can find all the source code in the description. Let's examine the solution from top to bottom. We'll interact with the local storage through usePersistentState hook or the managePersistentState function. We can think of the usePersistentState hook as a variant of the useState hook, which maintain the value across remotes and app visits. To use the hook, we need to provide the value type, key, and initial value. Though the code may seem somewhat lengthy, it can always be encapsulated within a custom hook for convenience. There are situations where our component doesn't need to listen for changes of the local storage value. In those cases, we simply want to either save or read the value from the local storage at specific moments. For instance, within the useAuth redirect hook, we may want to save the path accessed by an unauthenticated user. This would enable redirection to the same path after logging in. The managePersistentState function will return an object with get and set methods to read from and write values to local storage. We need to provide the value type and the key, but the initial value isn't necessary here. In both the usePersistentState hook and the managePersistentState functions, we use the persistent-state key enum. This enum contains all the keys used to store values in local storage. The idea is to keep all the keys in one place to avoid inadvertently using the same key for different values. A union type could be used for the key, but at some point we might need to change the data format of a value and therefore need a version for the key. Let's dive deeper into the implementation. Throughout the process, we establish the usePersistentState hook and managePersistentState function via other functions. This approach, while seemingly elaborate, is perfect for usability. When I want to include local storage on a new app, all I have to do is to create a persistent state file, which is a few lines of code. All logic could remain hidden in a different package, which is greatly beneficial in case of a monorepo. Within the persistent state file, we begin by creating an enum with keys and continue with initialization of the persistent storage object. Depending upon whether local storage is available or not, we use temporary storage or local storage. Both of these implement the same persistent storage interface. They include a way to get and set items and a method to subscribe to the changes of the value. Else we won't be able to track the changes in our usePersistentState hook. The getItem method retrieves the value from local storage and parses. We first handle null and undefined cases, then attempt to parse the value as a JSON. If this fails, the value is returned as a string. In the setItem method, we verify whether the value has changed. If it has, we update the value in local storage and alert all listeners subscribed to that value change. The add value change listener and remove value change listener methods simply add and remove listeners from the listeners object. The temporary storage follows the same logic but use a basic object to store values instead of local storage. The create persistent state hook functions take the storage object and return the use persistent state hook. The hook utilizes the use state hook to duplicate the value from local storage and trigger the component to render when the value changes. If there is no value in local storage, we'll use the initial value but will not update local storage with the initial value to avoid unnecessary re-renders. We use the useEffect hook to update the state. By subscribing to local storage value changes, we can refresh the state whenever the value changes and unsubscribe from the changes when the component is dismounted. The create persistent state manager function is a small wrapper that returns an object with get and set method which read and write values to the local storage for a particular key. Become an effective 10x programmer with my productivity app at increaser.org.